Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 17 of Webflow, the podcast dedicated to uncovering the greatest failures behind the greatest Webflowers, because success often comes after learning from many failures. I'm Jack, and today my guest is Jamie Windell. He is the founder of Khula Design Studio, an official Webflow partner based in Canada, though he's got a remote team around the world. And Jamie is a beast at the operations side of running an agency. Before Khula, he worked as a senior project coordinator and then traffic manager for Design Partnership, an award-winning design agency based in Johannesburg. And then, after moving to Canada, he worked as an account strategist and then digital producer at Skyrocket Digital before founding Khula. He's passionate about helping Webflowers develop. He's an ADP list mentor, and he's just released a guide for Webflowers to level up their game. Jamie, it's an honor to have you here.
Thank you, sir. Thanks, Jack. I appreciate it. Thanks for the intro.
Hey, thank you for coming on the show, and I'm absolutely psyched to have you here today. So, let's just say hi to anyone that's watching.
Yeah.
Anyone
back from South Africa? Maybe not, but in the evening time zone. Yeah,
we've got people on LinkedIn and on YouTube. So hi to everyone watching. Feel free to ask anything in the comments, and throughout the interview, I'll pick up on those as and when it's appropriate. But let's get into this thing. As I mentioned in the intro, you're a senior project coordinator, and then you're an account strategist, and then digital producer. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and what these job roles entail?
Yeah. I'll give you like a short overview. So when I left high school, I didn't know what I wanted to do or study. Like a lot of people do, they go off to college and university. I went straight into the corporate working world. So I joined a really cool company back in South Africa when I was 19 or 20, so super young. And I started out as like packing boxes, like logistics. So that was like the intro to the working world. And I kind of just worked my way up there. Fast forward 6 years later, kind of managing all the operations and logistics, shipping products all around the world. So my background, I would say for the first 8 years or 10 years of my working career was operation focused. So that's mainly what I do today and where my strengths are. But the admin side, the operational side, logistics, I understand finance. Like I kind of dabbled in a lot of different roles within those companies that I worked at. So same like at Design Partnership. I was working with the finance department a lot, doing costing sheets, helping the project managers, a lot of project coordination, a lot of admin-driven type tasks. But then obviously fell in love with the design aspect and the creative aspect while I was there. So in the background, kind of just self-taught on YouTube and Google, branding and logos and colors and back then WordPress and building websites on WordPress. So that's kind of how I fell into the creative scene. But most of the roles that I've been in for the last 10 years have been in operational or logistics roles. So that's kind of been my background. But all the design stuff that I know today and that I learned as well as at Skyrocket Digital, my learning obviously accelerated while I was there. So learning everything from like brand strategy, brand identity design, verbal identities and UX UI design, and watching the designers kind of design, custom design websites. And that's kind of where all my learning really, really took off. And then from there, it's just myself, and then just kind of taking what I know during the day and then making in the evenings and weekends, kind of exploring and dabbling a little bit more like most of us do. And then kind of just learning from there. So yeah, that's kind of like just a very high level of like my background and what I've done over the last decade of my working career in a nutshell.
It's a seriously powerful combination to have a real understanding of kind of the behind the scenes of an agency as much as well, to then learn the actual kind of product of the agency, like
correct
skills, etc. So it's interesting that you came to it from the other side, because a lot of the time people will be like a junior designer and then work their way up, and then they'll kind of
Correct.
get further and further away from the actual hands-on design stuff as they go to management. But you've kind of come at it the other from another angle.
From another angle, yeah. I it's funny that you say it, because I used to tell myself, like, early on, like, my brother's really creative and he's good at drawing, and so is my wife, Diane. She's really good at drawing and super creative. I used to tell myself in the beginning, like, when I was in those roles or working in the operations side, like, oh, well, I'm not a creative, or I'm not, or I, like, I can't draw, I can't paint, like, I can't, like, I'm not good with colors, or, like, I used to love interior design. I used to love, like, that scene. But I always never saw myself as a creative until I stepped into actually trying it and doing it. Then I was like, oh, wait, hang on. I actually enjoy this. And I do have quite a good eye for design. And so then I started learning and just self-taught, like, kind of teaching myself to be creative, which is kind of weird, but because I was so focused on finance and operations and logistics, which is totally different, it's more the analytical type side of things. Then I wanted to step more into how can I retrain myself, or learn new things that can help me become more creative, like a creative way of thinking, or just coming up with designs and colors and playing around with fonts and learning all those type of things. So all of it that I did, I just kind of had to, like, pivot and change. But I did it because it's what I enjoyed and what I liked. I mean, I used to draw and sketch, like, a little bit in high school. And to be honest with you, like, and my friends will probably laugh at this, like, I wasn't very academic in school at all. I hated school. I hated learning. I love school. I love hanging out with friends. We were like the naughty but mischievous type of group. Like, we weren't the academic. We weren't super sporty. We were kind of like in the middle. So yeah, so, like, schooling, I did not do well at school. So everything post school, I actually constantly just kept shocking myself. I was like, oh, wow, like, I didn't know this about myself. I'm actually doing pretty well in this area. Or, oh, like, this is a strength. And slowly over time, you just kind of get to see, like, what are some of the things you enjoy? What are some of your strengths? What are you good at? And then it kind of, like, all fits together almost like as a puzzle.
Yeah,
It's
it's
just
kind
super
of like,
interesting.
after you leave school, I find it's a journey of unlearning what you learned at school to really get to grips with life. That's what I find
Correct.
weird.
Yeah.
But it's
Yeah.
interesting that you say that you kind of had successes and learn as you went to a certain extent. And now with Khula, just to give an idea to anyone watching, like, where you're at, like, how many workers do you have, and what kind of projects are you working on? Can you give us a flavor of those?
Yeah. So Khula's now 2 years now. So I launched it in October 2020. Well, that's when the idea and all of that came into play. And then incorporated officially in January 2021. And it's been great. Like, it's amazing. Like, it surpassed my dreams and, like, wildest dreams in golf. Like, maybe just hit the market at the right time and at the right place. Like, during the pandemic, like, everyone was leaving their 9 to 5s and starting their own sideline hustles or starting their own businesses. And I kind of just hit the scene at the right time and the right place, but also deployed a lot of, like, strategies, which we can chat about later on, that I put into the business. But yeah, at the moment, it's just myself that runs the design studio. And I have about, I would say, 8 to 12 dedicated contractors that are used on a continuous basis that are situated around the world. And then about 30 plus other contractors on the database as well that I can tap into as the work ebbs and flows. So it allows me to scale really with the project. So at one stage, I remember last year, I was managing like 10 projects at once, and that was a little bit crazy. Like, operationally, even though I'm very strong at that, that was a lot for me to manage all 10 in one go, but I did it. And having just a great team behind me, like, I tapped into a lot of the contractors at that time to kind of help me fulfill the work. But yeah, so I would say that's the team. We have, since launch, I think we've helped just over 85 small businesses around the world transform their brand and website, which is pretty cool. And it's amazing. Like, it's been like they're all over the place. So, I mean, I've had like clients find me out of like Dallas, Texas, and California, and the Caribbean, United Kingdom, Germany, Hong Kong, and then all across Canada. So it's been pretty cool to kind of work with different people from different walks of life, different areas of the globe. Like that's been really cool. Obviously, time zones sometimes become a challenge, but yeah, I mean, it's been like I'm super proud of where we are today and what we've managed to accomplish in such a short amount of time. It's crazy when you put your mind to something and you just focus on one area. It just you could just grow it from there. Like it's wild. It still blows my mind even to today what we've managed to achieve in such a short amount of time.
Yeah. So that's insane. So in a couple of years, you've worked with 85 clients. You've got 8 to 12 contractors that you're working with regularly, but 30 on the books, depending on the flow of clients. So this is where you're at now. It sounds like things are really, really on the up, and I'm really excited for you.
Thank you.
But this is not what this show is about. This show
Yes.
is talking about what you've learned in order to get to that stage through failure. So let's dig into some of these then. Tell me about failure number 1, the fear of failure. Such an interesting failure topic. No one talked about this one yet, so I'm intrigued to hear what you've got to say.
Yeah. So I know you and I were chatting, and like in the beginning, and I'm sure a lot of people that are listening can relate to this. Even for me, I mean, so this is the 10th business that I've started and tried. Started, and hopefully this is the final one. But I've back in South Africa, I dabbled in a lot of different ventures and startups and businesses. And one of the things is like the fear of failing. So like failing like your spouse, your parents, your friends, your colleagues. Like when you take the plunge to say, okay, I'm going to step forward and I'm going to start my own business. It's a big deal. Like it's a big step. And so there's that fear that kind of lingers inside of you, like, oh, what happens if I'm going to fail my parents, or I'm going to fail because you tell everyone around, you're like, hey, I've got this idea. I'm going to start this business. You get all excited, and then the fear kicks in, and you're like, oh, well, there's a potential I can fail my family and fail my spouse or fail my partner, fail my friends. Like, so in the beginning, there's that fear of failing. And so over the years, when I was looking back, I was like, a lot of times that fear is what actually drove me to keep going. So like, especially, I'm sure you can relate, like in the beginning, like there's a lot of self-doubt, right? Like questions that come up in the beginning, like, oh, well, can I do this? Am I capable? Do I have enough experience? Do I even know what I'm talking about? Am I going to be able to make sales? Like there's just so many emotions and feelings and things happening in the beginning that I feel like fear of failing is probably, like, for me, was one of the biggest ones that you get like right in the beginning. Like, oh, like that's a constant thought. And so I would say, like, to anyone specifically, like especially in the beginning, if you acknowledge that fear of like wanting to fail, it's okay. But then I would say, like, try and shift your mindset to think of the positive side of things. So like, how can you push through to get going, and try and like kick the self-doubt to the side if you can, as much as you can, or remove the feelings as much as you can in the beginning. Because when I started the other business that I had in South Africa, for the first like couple of months, that's all I thought about. So my focus wasn't on growing the business or trying to get sales. It was waking up every morning and being like, okay, well, I don't want to let my friends down. I don't want to let my parents down. I don't want to let my partner down. Like, how am I gonna make this work? And so if your focus is constantly on that, then it doesn't allow room to focus on anything else, like actually getting sales and growing the business and putting yourself out there and stepping out of your comfort zone and doing the marketing and doing all the other things that come with growing and building a business. So I feel like for me, that was one of the things in the beginning, like one of the failures was the fear of failing.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense. But yeah.
I think it definitely does. I think you have this kind of such a big block of fear that means that you don't even take the first step. And I think sometimes we have this massive idea. It's like, I'm going to start a business, so I'm going to completely change my life around, and I'm just going to make it work and stuff. And that means that actually you're kind of like, oh no, I don't even know where to start. But I think breaking up this bigger goal into smaller goals means that you can take action, with little things day by day, and you can kind of break past this huge fear of failure, because you're kind of going from this, oh my god, this is a massive risk, to let's just send an email to someone who might be a potential client. Like, that's my goal today. And then you can kind of build in confidence from there. Maybe is that kind of how you broke it down?
For sure. And one of the things, like I have a lot of perseverance and drive and tenacity, and some people might have lacked that, or they might struggle in that area. So for some people, like taking action or taking massive action is sometimes hard for some people. So in the beginning, but to be honest with you, that's where you kind of have to like just step out and just kind of go into go mode, like do mode. Like I remember even with the first business that I started when I was 25, I'm now 34. But when the first business, that one only lasted 8 months. I ran out of money very fast, which we'll speak about when we get to the financials topic. But I remember that in the beginning, the kind of like you focus on just trying to get the next task done. So like, okay, how can I just take this thing without worrying about like, is it perfect? Am I going to put it out there? Because especially when I started that business, I was like too worried about like, oh, how does my logo look? How does my website look? How does like when I post on social media, like it had to be perfect. And it maybe took like weeks to even post something. And so because then the fear of like, judgment and what are people going to think, and did I misspell something, did I write something wrong, or whatever the case is. So I feel like once you get past that in the beginning, and you can just kind of just take action, like just do it anyway. So whether it's like 90% there or 95% there and you're happy with it and it makes sense, just post the thing, or just go live, launch your website or launch your brand, and then just reiterate over time. Like just constantly evolve it and update it over time. Same with Khula. If you look at Khula's website today, if I had to show you what the website looked like 2 years ago, you were like, oh man, like there's actually, it's a huge difference to what it is today to what it was then. And that's because in the background, I was just constantly refining, constantly taking action the whole time, like every day, every week, just constantly just iterating, refining, using feedback, making mistakes, building on the mistakes, and then carrying on the whole time.
And I definitely think that that's something as well, that when you want to launch something, or like tell your friends or family or get feedback or whatever, you want it to look like the finished product, but you don't have, you might not have any clients as of yet, and you're kind of building as you're going, so it's never going to be perfect. So just taking action, like you say, seems to be the kind of way forward, and breaking up that huge goal into micro goals that will overall take you to that big goal as well.
For sure.
One thing that you talked about there was letting down your friends and family. It's interesting. I've had this experience as well with particularly my dad, where you love them, and you care about what they think, but they don't really understand what you're doing, but they're giving you advice, and you're kind of torn, because you're like, I love you, and we're family and stuff, but they kind of give like offhand advice, like, oh, I wouldn't do that if I was you, and stuff. And it's like, well, you're not me, and you have no idea what I'm trying to achieve. You don't even understand how to send an email, let alone how to make a website, for example. I'm going on a rant here. I'm leading up to a question, Jamie, I promise. How did you deal with unsolicited advice from loved ones when you started businesses? Because I think that's something that maybe Webflowers watching, like, I want to do this Webflow thing, but I'm talking to my family about it, but they're like, whoa, that's a risky career path, and I don't really understand how the internet works. How did you kind of deal with that?
That is a good one. That's a good one, because I can totally relate. Like my dad is very pro, like old school, like you go to university, you study, and he's a mechanical engineer, so like very, went
Mm.
through that path. So I remember in the beginning, even when I started working in corporate and then left to start my own business, my first one, he also said I was crazy. Like, what are you doing? Like, there's no money in that, or there's no structure. Like, why don't you just go and study? And so, when then I took his advice and I was like, okay, well, I'll go and study BCom accounting, kind of to satisfy my dad, which is actually not right in a way where I loved accounting and I enjoyed the financial side of things, but I did it part time for a year and I did really well and I surprised myself. And I was like, this is not for me. After the year, I'm doing it part time in the evenings. It was so tough. So I was like, nope, I'll put that aside. Obviously, you felt disappointed. You kind of feel like you're letting your dad down or letting people down. But then later on, it's weird. Like I almost had to find my own way, find my own feet. So take the feedback almost like with a pinch of salt, almost like not take it, take the feedback. But you know what? I hear what you're saying, and I know that you're doing it out of love. Like you don't want, you're doing it because you love us. You don't want to see us hurt. You don't want to see us fail. You don't want to see us. And I get that as probably as a parent, that's the last thing that they want for their child, right? So, but I feel like you could just take some of that feedback and just reassure your parents and say, hey, or your spouse or your partner, and be like, hey, you know what? Like, I want to try this. I want to do this, and let me just give it a go. And if I just have your support, if I know if I fall backwards, you there to just help me pick me up and help me when I'm there. But give me the chance to just like prove you wrong or prove you that I can do it. And so later on, I just kind of every feedback that I got from everyone, I kind of just took it like with a grain of salt, and I'll be like, you know what, thanks, I see what you're saying, but I went and did it anyway, if that made sense. Like I kind of just parked the idea, or I just wrote it down, or whatever the case is, and then just went and did it anyway. Because now fast forward, my dad's actually really proud of what I've done today and where I am, even though a lot of stuff, like you said, he doesn't understand. Like he doesn't understand the technology, or like why are you building the websites, and like, or why don't you do it this way or do it that way, or like focus on the business on this. But like he's coming from a different era and a different mindset and a different learning. And so sometimes I just have to tell them, yeah, but this is what's happening in the trends. This is where we are today. Like this is how people operate today. It's like it's very different. And kind of I think just educating them, because they like my dad's not on social media, like he hates social media. And so he doesn't know, like he's not aware of a lot of these things that are happening around. So I think just educating them and showing them, like putting it back to them and showing them how we work today, and maybe just like bringing them into the journey, bring them in. That's what I started doing. Then kind of like that kind of changed for me. But yeah, I would say opinions, it's a strange one. Like you might find like friends that will reach you on, and you'll find friends and be like, no, that's a dumb idea, that's stupid, you shouldn't do that. And so like all the opinions, you can kind of like, I would say just take it with a grain of salt, and still follow your heart, follow what you're passionate about, just go for it anyway. And if you fall back, you have your friends and family to support you there still anyway. They might laugh at you, but at least you can say you tried.
Yeah. So
yeah,
few different things that you said there. One, admit that you don't know everything, but try and get their support and trust, even if they don't fully understand it. Just say, look, I just need the space to try this, and you've just got to trust me. And if it messes up, then so be it. Take their advice with a pinch of salt, because they're coming from a completely different, time frame. Their knowledge is, maybe not. They don't have the same perspective as you, because they have completely different knowledge, and they've been told different advice from their parents, which they might be telling you.
100%, 100%.
And then educating them about
what
you're trying to do as much as possible. It's not always easy with parents. To explain what Webflow is. But my mum still doesn't know what to say when someone says, how's Jack? And I'm just like, it's fine. Just say internet, mum. Just say
I
internet.
love it. Yeah, just say internet.
There's something that I found really, really helpful. This was on the Design Matters podcast with Debbie Millman, and she talked about if they're not in the arena getting their asses kicked, then don't hear their advice. And I think that's quite an interesting idea. Like, if they're not a Webflower, or if they're not an agency owner who's, you know, in the arena, you know, playing in the same game that
And
you're playing, then frankly,
It's,
their advice is not maybe that relevant, even if they're, you know, a loved one. I found that idea really, really helpful to kind of navigate the whole explaining to
I,
the parents what you're doing.
and that's a good point. That's such a good point. Like I often find myself doing this. Like I try and put myself in the shoes of the other person before just judging from the outside. Like a lot of times, like your parents or your friends or your spouse, like they're coming from a different perspective. They're coming from the outside in. So like you said, when you're in the arena, you're the one, you know, doing all the fighting and the battling and the understanding and the, the day-to-day struggles and pushing through challenges and obstacles and uncomforts and all those things. But I feel like sometimes you got to tell them, like, well, put yourself in my shoes, and then kind of like help them understand, like, this is what's happening in my business, or this is what's happening in our industry, or this is what we do, to try and help them, you know what I mean, step into your shoes so they can get a feel and see, oh, okay, wait, hang on, like there's more to this, or there is opportunities, or there is potentials, and you can help them see the opportunity and potentials that maybe lay ahead that they don't see because they're just coming from the outside perspective. They're not aware of it, or don't know the industry.
Really powerful advice there for any young Webflowers that are trying to break in to follow what their dream is, if it is Webflow or whatever else. I think parents is a particularly difficult one. Tell me about failure number 2, failing to keep track of your financials.
This is an interesting one. So and an important one. Obviously, at the different companies I worked at, like I was super grateful to be a part of finance teams and learn finance and all the way up to trial balance. So I kind of have a good idea of, like, you know, tracking finances and all those type of things. But I feel like this is something they don't really teach you in school, or maybe even after school, or when starting a business. I feel like financials is like the heartbeat of the company. Like if you don't get it right, you don't really have a business. So I, like, for me, keeping track, like failing to keep track of your financials is I feel like a lot of people struggle in this area. Thankfully, I learned a lot of the financials, so I was able to deploy a lot of the tactics and learnings around financials. But if you don't, I would say then hire someone who in your circle, or an accountant or a friend that knows financials very well. Make sure you onboard them into your business to help you. But things like, you know, you and I were chatting about this, like, you know, managing your, like, taxes, like country taxes, and like savings during the dry months, where there's no work coming in. You know, those type of things, like those things aren't really things at the top of your mind. In the beginning, you just kind of like, okay, how do I get my next sale? How do I put myself out there? How do I market myself? But then when the money comes in, what are you doing with the money? It's such an important piece of the puzzle. Like, do you just let it come into your bank account, and then all of a sudden you're getting more and more work, more and more money's coming in, and then are you just spending the money? Like, do you know what the money's going towards? Like, are you saving some of the money? Are you putting some aside for your taxes? Are you
so what I've just got a project, money's come into my bank account, or should I first ask which bank account is it going into? What do I do? What do I do with that money?
For sure. I would say so if you're a solo entrepreneur, it depends what type of business you're setting up, but majority, like when I was setting up my businesses, I always kept personal and business separate. So I would say if you're operating out of your personal bank account, I would say rather treat it separately. So go to your local bank and set up a actual business checking account. Step number 1. And then with that step, create, normally some of the banks, well, here in Canada and back in South Africa, they give you normally a savings account with that checking account. So in your country, most of the times, like when you open up a business checking account, they give you a business savings, which is cool. So then you take it so now when you log in, sometimes I even used to treat them as 2 separate bank divisions, like institutions. So you would have like your personal with a certain bank, and then you would have your business. So like as an example here, my personal banking is with Envision, but then my business banking is with Scotia Bank. So two different banks completely. So my logins are even separate. Kind of just to separate the business and the personal out completely. So I would say that's kind of step number one. And then money coming into your bank account. So a couple of things. So one is depends on what you're acting as a business owner. So if you're a sole proprietor, like you're just operating as yourself, you need to figure out in your country, wherever you are, what are the taxes that you will pay at the end of the year to the government for operating as a sole proprietor. If you are an incorporated or limited company, like what we are, or in South Africa they call them PTYs, LTDs. If you are registered as that, then you need to figure out, okay, what is the tax percentage that you need to pay at the end of the year for the income that you're getting in. So give you an example. So let me run like a scenario maybe for the audience so it could help them paint the picture a little bit better. So if you're, let's say like me, you have so into the bank account, you got money coming in for the project. Normally what you would want to do is take, for us, like as an incorporated, we pay 11% tax to the government. So this 11% now, I'm talking from a business perspective. So don't get them confused. It's not fun. It's not personal. You still pay personal tax as an individual to, every year, your T4s or whatever they call it in your country. You still have to pay your income tax to the end of the year. I'm talking about business tax, which a lot of people forget about. So for me as an incorporated, I chose incorporated because it's a low percentage of tax, so 11%, and I drive a lot of my expenses through the business so that it brings my paying tax down. So when money comes into the bank account, what I do is, and I mean some people do this differently, but I take the 11% of the money coming in, or you could take it off the net profit that's coming in. So let's say if 1,000 comes in, you made 500 profit of the 1,000, you take 11% of the 500 and you move that straight away into a separate savings account, into your business savings account. Because what happens is at the end of the year, when it comes to paying the government your taxes, if you haven't set aside that money, then all of a sudden you're scrambling, running around trying to find a couple $1,000s, or in some people's instances, tens of thousands of dollars, and in some businesses that I've heard of, hundreds of thousands of dollars, trying to figure out where do I find this money to all of a sudden pay the government when I'm supposed to be setting that money aside. Okay. So does that kind of make sense? I'll pause there.
Yeah, so we got 3 big steps there. Just so I've understood this right, Jamie, jump in if I haven't. First, set up a different bank account from your personal bank account, ideally with a separate bank so that you've got separate logins. You know exactly what the difference is between those.
Yeah.
2, if you're a sole proprietor, well, whether you're a sole proprietor or a limited company, work out what taxes you need to pay in your country. And then whenever money comes in from any project, take the tax money straight out, and put it in the savings account so that you can, that's all just sat there, and then at the end of the year, you can just pay the government whatever you owe.
Correct, because what will happen is if you don't take it out straight away and you leave it in your checking account, when you log into your bank online or on your phone and you're like, oh, cool, I have $5,000 in my bank account. It's like, well, not all 5,000 belongs to you to spend or to transfer to yourself as a salary or as money. Some of that money belongs to the government. So you need to then, so you see, that's where the confusion is. You can accidentally spend that money every month that technically belongs to the government money. And then by the time the end of the year comes, you look back and you're like, oh, well, and your accountant, and you do your financials and they say, okay, we need to pay your taxes over to the government. You need to pay $10,000. You're going to be like, well, I don't have 10,000. The actual cash flow in my bank account, I've already spent it. So I don't have the $10,000 to pay the government. So now you're sitting scrambling, or you might go into debt or have to get loans or credit cards to then pay the government portion. Whereas if in the beginning, if you were just diligent enough or strict enough to move the money at that time, then you won't sit with that issue at the end of the year.
Makes a lot of sense. And you talked about cash flow there. For anyone that is, I'm just a Webflower. Like, I just want to make websites for people. What's cash flow? Just talk to me about what cash flow is from the perspective of a freelancer who, might not really, they're just, freelancing and they're not really too sure kind of what that term means.
Yeah. So I'll keep it super simple, because a lot of, again, like this is financial stuff that normally you would get an accountant or someone to help you with. But on the cash flow side, it's how are you managing your money in order to have enough cash to keep you going for the months to come. So cash flow, you can get projected cash flow, like you can over the months calculate, okay, what's my revenue? What's my average expenses per month? And you can quickly see, okay, I need so much per month to keep me going. That means I'm going to need so many clients coming into the funnel to keep the cash in the business flowing over the next couple of months. So if you don't keep a tab on, and I do this in our business, and I see a lot of businesses do this, is you have to keep your finger on the pulse when it comes to your financials and cash flow in the business. So how much money's in the bank, how much money's going out, how much projected or prospects do you have in the pipeline that you think are going to come through in the next week or in the next month or in the next 2 months, so that you can foresee the sight of going, okay, well, I have 10,000 coming in next month, and I know I'm 80% sure that the project's going to land. Okay, so that amounts to so much, and my expenses are 5,000. That gives me 5,000 cash flow to keep me going for the next month, as an example, in simple terms. So where a lot of people just kind of don't look at what revenue's coming in every month, what are their business expenses, and actually really looking at it properly, like going at, okay, out of all my expenses, what can I shave away? What can I trim down to then increase the cash flow in the business, so that when the dry months come, or the months that you're not busy, then at least then you have some sort of savings, or you have some cash to keep you going.
Yeah,
so that's where the big shift, or the mind shift, comes into play. Around the financials, if that makes sense.
And if anyone's listening that's like, oh, Jamie's an agency owner, this doesn't apply to me as a solo freelancer, trust me, it does. Like, I have been pretty screwed some months, expecting money from an agency that didn't come in, or, I didn't understand milestones. So I just was like, oh, I'll just get paid at the end of the project once I've done the work. And then you're absolutely screwed for like months, because that money is not in your bank account. You're waiting on, the work to happen. And you're waiting on clients to pay you, and people don't pay you on time and stuff. So as much as this might just be like, ugh, this is so boring, I want to just make fun, cool websites with a load of animations, like, get the fundamentals of money down. It will really, really help. And
it does.
That's coming from someone that doesn't have the fundamentals down and needs to, and has been screwed. Just to be clear, I'm no money.
You know what it did for me is it's money is it's a fun one. Like for me, it kind of it kind of, once you have your finger on the pulse of, like, like really closely what money's coming in, what money's going out. To be honest, it helps you create peace of mind. Like, it helps you sleep better at night, because when you don't know, and you don't know, like, if you don't have like some money going into savings. So what I was going to say was, coming back to the calculation, when you transferring that money out for the taxes, you can transfer a certain percentage out into a savings as well. So normally you want to treat taxes, savings first, then you pay yourself, not the other way around. You don't pay yourself, and then whatever money's left over, you then do a little bit into savings and a little bit into taxes. It should work the other way around. So try to focus on taxes, savings, paying off debt first, then pay yourself. It's kind of like the ratio, if you want to call it. But what I was going to say was, in the keeping your finger on the pulse and creating peace of mind, it just helps you, like, when you're looking at your financials, okay, next month is going to be a quiet month. Maybe it's over December, and December is normally a quiet season. So how do you plan your money and your financials to know that if a project comes in, then great, then money for Jan. But if a project doesn't come in for the month of December, do I have some money in my savings to keep me going for that month, and to pay all my business expenses as well as myself, and then keeps me going into January? I feel like a lot of people are living like especially in the freelance game, it's almost like you're living paycheck to paycheck, like month to month. Like, okay, I won a website for 4,000. I just got the deal, and you get all happy and get excited, but then you don't look at, okay, what are all the expenses going out, and then how am I going to pay myself, and then what money can I set aside so that if I don't get anything for the next couple of weeks or post that 4,000 sale, then what happens? Like almost having that, almost like a forward mindset thinking around projects and money, because you almost feel like every month then you're kind of scrambling for work.
And the irony is that people a lot of the time become freelance because they want to decide how much they earn and like know, when they're going to work and when they're not and stuff. And actually, you don't realize when you're in a job just how nice it is just to get that regular paycheck. So
For sure.
yeah,
There's comfort. There's comfort in there for
you
sure.
need to kind of have a holistic view of a flow of clients, and there's going to be up months and down months, and knowing the times of the year when you're going to have down months and stuff. It comes, I think, with after freelancing for a few years, and I'm definitely still not there in terms of the knowledge, but everything you've said makes tons of sense. We need to have some kind of financial education.
For sure.
So tell me about failure number 3, failing to ask for help.
I would say a lot of Khula's success today is based off the people that helped me in the beginning. When I know you and I chatted about this as well a little bit. When we, in my previous like startups that I tried way back, you kind of work in a silo. So you sometimes a little bit too scared to ask people for help or seek out coaches or mentors. And you kind of feel like, oh, I can do it all on my own. I've got this type of thing. It's kind of like, that was kind of like my young mindset back then. It's like, well, I don't need anyone else. I'm just going to figure this out on my own. And I know this stuff, no one else can help me type of thing. But with Khula, when I started, one of the very first things that I did was got a coach on board. And then I also have a bunch of like mentors who could be your, like my uncle or my dad or family members that just kind of help you in the beginning. So I would say like the failure there is not asking for help. So in the beginning, that's kind of to flip that. The positive side, or the side that helped me, was reaching out to coaches and mentors and having them there to support me and help me in the beginning, is, to be honest with you, is what shaped Khula today. I don't think I could have done it on my own. If I was in my own silo and I didn't ask for help, I think I would be struggling a lot more. Even post that, I went on a coaching program with a really great coach out of the UK as well. And so I invested quite a bit of money into coaching and mentorship in the beginning, because I knew that if I wanted to grow and get this business going right, I needed to bring on people who have done it, or who can give me really good advice to help me overcome some of the challenges, specifically in the beginning. Like, could be things like difficult client, or overcoming, like, maybe a client maybe paying late. How do you treat that? Like, instead of just Googling it or trying to figure it out on your own, if you have a coach or a mentor that's in your corner that you can just tap into, that can help you with those, that's the power right there. And they helped me a lot, especially in the beginning, overcome a lot of those challenges. Yeah.
And why do you think that a lot of the time people don't ask for help?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe they're scared they're going to be judged. Like, well, don't you know this? Like, they're scared people are going to say like, yeah, but you should know this. Like, maybe they're scared of like what people are going to think of them, or what they're going to say of them if they ask for help. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe for some it could be something completely different. Maybe they just have their own insecurities or their own feelings or emotions that are stopping them from reaching out and asking for help. I'm normally extrovert by nature, but maybe if you find someone that's a little bit more introvert or a little bit more quiet, seeking help or asking for help, or jumping on a call with a mentor or coach can be daunting, can be scary.
Yeah.
Like,
Definitely.
So I think for some people like that, maybe that could be one of their reasons, maybe not seeking or asking for help.
Yeah. So I'm a
Yeah.
young Webflower. I'm hearing your advice and I'm like, okay, Jamie, I need help. Where do I go? Where do I find that help?
Yeah. So a great one is, well, obviously, I'm a mentor on ADP List, but ADP List is really cool. Like I stumbled across the platform a while back, and Felix Lee created an amazing platform that basically democratizes mentorship for all. So he's basically making mentorship for creatives around the world for free. So it's completely free. So you can go and there's over 5,000 mentors on there that you can ask advice, on anything. Your portfolio, how to change careers, how to switch from, going from full-time to freelance, how to price our projects, whatever the case is. There's tons of like really experienced mentors and people on there who are work at big companies and have done amazing things in their life, can share their story and share insights and valuable information. So that's a really great place, and it's free. So I would say if you're a freelancer, a Webflow freelancer, like definitely jump on ADP List. Like you can search for people, you can choose, read their bios, see if they fit your values, or if you feel like they've done something interesting and you can learn from them, jump on a call with them. And then, I mean, in your circle of sphere, there might be some people that or maybe friends of friends that maybe own or run a successful business. It might not be in the same industry, but that person might come with a lot of knowledge. So if you have a buddy that and his father runs a really successful tech company, or is a financial director at a company, that could be someone that you could reach out to for financial advice, or like how to calculate your margins, or any sort of those small things that you struggle with on day to day. If you actually look amongst just your people, your sphere around you, you'll probably be quite surprised at who could help you and coach you and mentor you if you just reach out and ask them.
Yeah, definitely. I've put a couple of things in the chat there. So the adplist.org, that's the URL for that. And then the arena.org.uk is one that I joined when I was, a few years ago now. And it's really, really cool. There's free mentorship there as well, where you do like live calls with people. But yeah, like you say, Jamie, I think just asking people who are a little bit ahead of you to just say, hey, can I quiz you about your life and just understand
Can I pick your brain?
how you got to where you are? Like, it doesn't need to be like, okay, I'm going to lock you in to be my mentor.
Yeah.
Like, it can just be a very organic thing that they actually
100%.
become your mentor after just having
Correct.
a call. And I think actually that as well is something that's vastly underrated. Just reaching out to someone who you like to work with, or who have qualities that you want to have, and just saying, hey, can I just ask you about how you developed and how you learned what you know?
I think you're right. I think and I wanted to say this, the mentor is not, it doesn't have to be a formal thing. Like you can just like pick someone's brain, like you said, that's someone that's done something that has experience in a particular field or industry. Like you don't have to make it formal, or they don't have to be like, you don't have to call them your mentor, or you don't have to be a mentee. You don't have to label anything. I feel like it's just I feel like you can just step out and just ask for help. Like you don't have to put a label to it, or make it formal. And there's definitely people around there that can help you. And there's so many people that are willing to help as well. So it's amazing. Like just some of the people that I've stumbled across, and like tons of people that I've jumped on calls with who have helped me and helped Khula and stuff, like just with ideas, and like ex-employees and stuff like that. Like it's crazy the amount of people out there that are just willing and openly just want to help others.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And I would also say that your mentor doesn't need to be someone famous. I think like there's this idea that's like Christo or nothing. Like this, people are just like,
shout out to Christo.
Shout out to Christo, an incredible mentor.
Incredible.
I mean, I can't think of anyone in the design space that has had a big impact as a mentor. But he is not going to probably reply to your message if you just DM him saying, "Hey, can I pick your brains?" So I think there's something to be said about, you know, respecting that some people are, you know, maybe inundated with messages like that, and you know, just being aware that if someone doesn't necessarily reply to you, it doesn't mean that you know, they hate you or whatever. It's just that potentially reaching out to someone who isn't inundated with messages in every day to ask if you can pick their brains might be a better bet.
For sure. And I think to add to that quickly is when you seek someone to ask for help, or if you do find a mentor, even in my case, I'm actually learning from the mentee as well. So it works both ways. So it's not that when you go to someone to ask for help, that person that's giving you the advice or that is helping you, they're also learning from you at the same time. So it's kind of like a give and take. So it's also really cool for someone maybe who is experienced, they can also learn something from you. So I feel like it kind of works both ways, which is pretty cool.
Awesome. That's really interesting advice. So you're not just taking, you don't need to message people and say like, "Oh, I feel terribly sorry." But you are actually giving them something in return, which is really, really good.
Correct.
So speaking of all of this, Jamie, obviously you're an ADP list mentor, but you've also written this booklet to help Webflowers level up their freelancing game. A lot of the things that we've talked about today. What else is in this booklet, and where can people find it?
To give a bit of context, I wrote the book like last year, and so some of the things that I struggled with was like specifically around the operational side of things. So over just using all my experience over the years, and I kind of just took everything that I know around, you know, working in agencies and how they work and the ways of working. And I kind of just cherry picked all the golden nuggets and things that I feel like could really help a lot of freelancers almost run their freelance business as if it were an agency. So deploy like all the how to communicate with clients, how to set up your folders with your clients, how do you pitch and sell Webflow, how do you structure your proposal. It covers things like all the financial stuff that we spoke about, like a costing sheet. And so a lot of like the back end operational stuff, like it's got some other like Webflow tips and learnings. And, you know, if you're new to Webflow and you're not sure where to start to learn Webflow, like it's got that kind of flow to it as well. But it's more things like how to like run discovery calls and like, you know, all the kind of things that agencies would do to kind of take their clients through that onboarding journey from start to finish. So all the way from like, what do you do in the beginning when you onboard a client, and then all the way through to what do you do when you offboard a client? Because I feel like a lot of freelancers get excited. They just want to get in and do the work and do the designing and the developing, but then they forget about all the other touch points that you have with your potential customer, whether you're working for other agencies or you're working with direct clients. What about like your go live checklist, and what about your offboarding? Like, are you asking for a testimonial review? Are you sending a survey to get feedback so that you can improve on your skills and create even a better experience for your next customer? Like all those things from start to finish is kind of what I wanted to put into a guide so that I could help people kind of think through kind of all the elements of like running an agency really, but then just in one space that they can learn and then deploy that as a freelancer, because I feel like as a freelancer, they will be super powerful. Like you would show up totally different, almost like as a business owner, not as a designer, if that makes sense.
That is epic. So it's
yeah,
is this
and so you could 50 pages, 50 plus pages, and it includes a consulting call with me as well, just to kind of like help you if you have any questions, or if you get stuck through the guide, or if there's anything like you really want to dig deeper on. So I've included that as well. But yeah, you can find it at Khula.studio. It's there. You'll see a banner at the top of the website.
Epic,
so far we've had great feedback on it, so it's been awesome. And I feel like it can definitely help a lot of people for sure.
Cool. I put that link in the chat. So if anyone's interested in checking that out, feel free.
Cool.
So let's get into the final question. We've talked about your 3 failures that have been and gone and what you've learned from them, but this is a harder question. What is your next failure going to be?
That's a good one.
That was the funniest noise I've ever had in reaction to that question.
That's crazy. That's a hard question. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a tough. I've been wrestling, like, do I carry on with myself, or do I scale the design studio and hire more people like Jamie's to come in and then work in the business as like account strategist or brand strategist. And so I would say probably the next failure is going to be scaling up. Getting a team, maybe a more of a permanent team coming in. I feel like there's a lot of mistakes that could be made there. Like, that's another whole area on its own, like hiring, onboarding employees. I feel like that's something I've worked as an employee, so I know. But now if you flip it the other way around, I feel like that's probably going to be my next failure is around the scaling up. If I have to be honest, that's the part that's a little bit scary, a little bit daunting, a little bit of the unknown. Yeah, and I'm sure there's going to be, and if I get to that stage, I'm sure there is going to be mistakes and failures that are going to come out of that for sure.
And just a
Yeah.
question there, like, why do you want to grow bigger than you are? Because it does sound like you're doing amazingly well, and I'm always intrigued to ask. It sounds like a silly question because it's like, well, obviously you're meant to grow, but I'm just intrigued as to why you don't want to be like a really successful company of one.
Yeah, and I that's something I've been wrestling with. I love working by myself and on my own, and I feel like we're doing really well as on my own as well. But sometimes, like, it is really nice to have the extra support. So, like, support meaning like someone that's full time that can help you, like, maybe kind of split some of the workload up. Because as you know, even with me running my design studio, it's like there's so many different hats that you're wearing, like marketing, sales, you jumping on the calls, the clients, the driving the contractors. Like, there's a lot of different things that you're doing every day. So I feel like the only reason, or the reason I would want to kind of scale up and bring someone in is just to kind of help with the workload and kind of divvy up some of the clients and the client work. So I could maybe take on some clients. This particular person could take on some clients, and then that allows us to take on or make a bigger impact or take on more work, because it is only me. There is only so. If I want to deliver the high quality work that we deliver, I can only take on so many projects at a time. Otherwise, then I've got a recipe for disaster. Then I'm going to fail my clients. So I only take on a limited amount of clients. I try to book them out. I even book our clients months in advance sometimes because we get so busy. But not every client wants to wait 3 months for their website or 4 months and then only start on their website. So I feel like the next step is to try and bring someone in that could help so that we can facilitate the leads or the clients that come through.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I'm looking forward to having you back on the Webflow podcast to talk about these growing pains that you may or may not experience. It sounds like you're a very organized guy, though, so I'm sure
Thank you.
things will come together tight.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Jamie, for being on the show. Thanks for everyone who's been
Jack.
watching along.
This has been awesome. Loved our conversation. Yeah.
Great stuff. If anyone wants to message you, Jamie, is the best way to do that over Instagram or email, or how should people contact you if they wanted to follow up with any questions?
They can. Probably LinkedIn is probably the easiest. I mean, everyone's connecting on LinkedIn these days, so you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm sure Jack will provide the link. Just a LinkedIn, you can send me a request or a DM or message, and we can chat. Or you can go to the website and book a discovery call if you want to jump on a quick 30-minute discovery call or chat. We can then, you can feel free to book there through Calendly, and we can jump on a call and have a chat. Love to help you out. Yeah.
That's awesome. I'll
Cool.
just put your LinkedIn in the chat, and that's there now. So if anyone wants to message Jamie, feel free. If anyone wants to message me, that's Jack Redley1 on Twitter. If you haven't already subscribed to the newsletter, then you definitely should. There's going to be this edited interview. There's going to be an article. There's going to be 3 Webflow jobs, and there's going to be 3 inspo websites.
Such a good newsletter, by the way. So good. I love it. I've been reading it. Love it. Yeah. Love your newsletter.
I'll pay you later. Thanks, Jamie. But yeah, you'll get the edited interview in there as well if you've caught this stream halfway through and you want to listen to the podcast. Thanks again, Jamie.
Thanks, Jack.
Thanks everyone for watching. See you guys not next week, actually. See you in 2 weeks. I will not be doing a podcast next week because of the Webflow Conf. I imagine people might be prioritizing that. Fair enough.
For sure.
Speak to you guys in a couple of weeks. Bye then.
Cool. Cheers, Jack.